Travel Channel, and today we're at Sandringham Palace in Norfolk. So I was down here visiting a friend and she took me along to Sandringham Palace. It's a long drive up to the property, and once you get there, there's a whole array of little shops and cafes, and there's a restaurant. The downside of it is you have to pay a lot for parking. 2 hours was £5, and that's probably one of the only negative things I'm going to say about this trip. I personally don't like paying a lot for parking, and as a National Trust member, I'm very used to getting it included in my membership. The amenities at Sandringham were definitely of a very high standard. They had a really great gift shop with lots of unique items in it. They had a really large plant section, a beautiful restaurant full of plants. The only one that let it down a little bit was the cafe, because it didn't have any indoor seating. So if the weather wasn't nice, I don't know where you go. And that also meant you couldn't charge up or plug your phone in, which for people like me, that's a big plus of a cafe. I do think Sandringham needs to modernise a little bit and understand that plug sockets are very important to a lot of people these days. So the gift shop has lots of really unique items, some of which are actually grown from produce from the Sandringham estate. The apple juice, beer and gin are actually quite famous, and the apples are grown on the Sandringham estate. The orchards at Sandringham were actually started by King George VI in the 1930s, and this tradition has carried on ever since. The apples are hand-picked and pressed in the original Norfolk barn, and what's left over is fed to the Sandringham Farms red poll cattle. They had some gorgeous flowers in the plant section. As you can see, it was very windy on the day that I went, and it was on and off sun. We are supposed to be in summer, but it's a very late start this year, so it's not going to look as sunny as it probably should in this video, and it does mean some of the flowers are a little bit delayed this year as well. But nevertheless, it was still very beautiful. So entry to the gardens is £15. It's £1 cheaper, I believe, if you book online. And to get into the house, it's £25. We somehow ended up paying for the house and the garden, but only thinking that we could see the garden, not realising the house was open. And they very kindly said that we could come back another day. So I'm hoping to update this video with the inside of the house as well. Here you can see me walking up to the very beautiful Sandringham Palace. It's definitely a stunning piece of architecture, and it's nestled into an 8,000 hectare estate. There is also a woodland, but I did not get time to see that. And there's also the formal gardens, which are open from April to October. The grounds have been developed in turn by each monarch that's resided here since 1863, when King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra first purchased the estate. So the estate itself has a very long history. It was actually recorded in the Domesday Book of 1086 as Sandringham, the sandy part of Desingham. This was later shortened to Sandringham, and it's how Sandringham Palace got its name. There's evidence there was a residence on the present site of the house from as early as 1296, and there's also been a number of prehistoric flint tools found in the area. The property came into the royal family through Queen Victoria, who bought it for her 21-year-old son, Albert. It was decided that he should move out of the family home and into a place of his own. His principal residence would be a house in London, but it was felt that he should also have a private home away from the town where he would be able to escape when duty permitted and be able to enjoy the benefits of a healthy country life. It's also known that Queen Victoria really wanted to keep Albert away from the temptations in London. So I really loved this cute little mini maze that they had in the centre. It was a relatively easy maze, it has to be said. And then when you got to the centre, there was a beautiful mosaic floor. Sandringham House was first opened to the public by Her Majesty in 1977, which was her Silver Jubilee year. but the gardens had already been opened for quite a long time before, as King Edward VII first opened them in 1908. King Edward came to love Sandringham and its gardens so much that when asked what career he would do if he wasn't king, he said he would be a landscape gardener. The gardens themselves are designed to have different highlights throughout the year, starting with a burst of colour in springtime when all the bulbs come up, shortly followed by some spectacular chameleon and rhododendron displays, and then in summertime the lakes become the focal point of the estate. The formal garden to the north of the house was designed by Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, and then William Broderick Thomas created the sweeping lawns and lakes. The famous rhododendron displays that spring into bloom in May were the work of Sir Eric Saville, the former head gardener of another much-loved royal landscape in Surrey called Saville Garden. This view of the house was one of Edward VII's favourite views. There are a few very quirky statues around on the property. So this one is called Old Father Time, and it was bought by the Queen Mother in 1951 for only £100, although I'm sure £100 was worth a bit more back then. And it was supposedly dating from around the 1800s. It actually reminds me a lot of the Hermit card from the tarot deck. There's also a 17th century bronze Buddha statue, which is at the end of the formal garden. It's got a somewhat unpleasant little smirk on its face, and the royal children used to call it Laffy or Goddy. It was acquired for Edward in 1869 by Sir Henry Keppel, who was the commander-in-chief of the Chinese station. I loved these beautifully manicured lawns. Nothing is more satisfying to me than these beautifully mown stripy lawns, although apparently they're going to be replacing quite a lot of the lawns for wild flowers because they are a lot more environmentally friendly. It's all the craze right now to be doing the wildflower meadows. I've seen a lot at the National Trust properties. So this horse statue at the end is a horse called Estimate, and Estimate was owned by Queen Elizabeth II and won the prestigious Ascot Gold Cup in 2013. So here we are in the stables, which has another cafe, which I don't think was open when I was here. And then they also have a very small mini museum around the Sandringham Fire Brigade. A lesser known fact was that King Edward VII, Queen Victoria's eldest son, was actually a keen amateur firefighter. He started the Sandringham Fire Brigade shortly after he purchased the Sandringham estate in 1862. The earliest known dispatch of the brigade was to London in February 1882 for training purposes. Whilst in operation, the Sandringham Fire Brigade attended 2 major fires at Sandringham House, and it also served the estate and the local community. It was also able to assist with fires in Norwich during World War II that were caused by air raids. It was manned constantly until 1968, when it became amalgamated into the Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service. Here are the Gunnera, which are one of my favourite plants. They're one of Britain's largest plants. And unbelievably, it's actually become an offence to either grow these plants or cause them to grow in the wild. And they are actually banned from sale because they are considered to be invasive. So it was June when I visited, which should officially be British summer, but it did rain. Welcome to England. This is one of the 2 lakes, and they are actually fed by natural springs. Hidden away in the rock garden is this super cute little summer house, and it was called Queen Alexandra's Nest, and it was actually built in 1913 as a little summer house for her. You can walk inside it yourself and have a beautiful view over the lake and sit down on one of the benches in there.